Hey everybody, this is Matt from endsickness.org. Today I'm going to tell you about the diet that is best for mast cell activation and histamine intolerance. First, let me say I'm not a medical doctor. This is not medical advice. This is based on my personal experience, and this is for informational, educational purposes only. So let me get back to the best diet for mast cell activation and histamine intolerance, and it is not the low histamine diet. I know everybody thinks that the low histamine diet is the best way to be able to control your mast cell activation symptoms, but the reality is it isn't, because the low histamine diet includes meat, includes eggs sometimes, and the problem is meat, eggs, dairy, nuts, seeds, gluten, processed food, all these things are the main problems driving your mast cell activation symptoms. And let me explain. It's not simply about the histamine that's in the food. That is a very elementary understanding of it. It is more about the foods that your body is having reactions to. These are the foods that are hard to break down. These are the foods that have complex proteins or dense protein, because protein is the hardest to break down of all things, and everything in the end ends in protein, has DNA of protein, right? So your hardest to break down proteins are going to be your gluten, your eggs, your dairy, your nuts, your seeds, we said your eggs, your processed foods. Those foods are typically the hardest to break down, and they're most likely to aggravate your immune system, aggravate your mast cells. And your mast cells are the ones that secrete all the histamine, all the inflammatory chemicals. So if you've already removed all of those foods and you're still having an issue and you're wondering, why am I still having an issue? I'm just eating meat and vegetables, and I'm just, having potatoes and stuff, and I keep reacting to everything. I'm eating everything that I'm eating, I'm reacting to. I got 5 foods left. I don't know what to do, Matt. Well, this is what I run into all the time with clients. They call me and say, man, I'm eating six different foods. I'm reacting to everything else. I'm reacting to broccoli. I'm reacting to cauliflower. I'm reacting to rice. I'm reacting to all these things. Well, the reality is you have to figure out why you're reacting to all these things, okay? And number one is going to be usually mycotoxins, okay? Mycotoxins are always involved when you got mast cell activation or histamine intolerance. And I go into that in other videos, but let me say in this video, I'm going to talk about the overconsumption of protein and complex proteins. That is what's aggravating the immune system, keeping the gut in a state of dysbiosis, making the liver backing up the kidneys. All these excess protein, this excess protein is not being broken down. It puts so much stress in the liver and the kidneys that it impairs your detoxification system, and then you have this flood of histamine, salicylates, oxalates, all these biogenic amines that flood the body, and your body becomes sensitive to them. And you become sensitive to this, sensitive to that. But the common thread is that these proteins that are hard to digest, the meats, your dairy, eggs, nuts, seeds, all those, they cause the gut to become leaky. And when they cause the gut to become leaky, then you start having reactions to everything else. You have reactions to broccoli, to cauliflower, to onions, to this, to that, all because the gut was leaky because of these foods that aren't being broken down. So the issue is not the plants, okay? The issue is not the plants. The issue is the complex proteins, the animal products, the gluten, the dairy, the nuts, the seeds, the eggs, the meat, all those things, right? So when you get off of that whole structure of a diet, you want to focus on, you want to focus on a plant-based diet, okay? Mostly a plant-based diet that's focused on your vegetables, fruits, rice, beans, potatoes, and focus on the foods that you do well with initially. If you're going to say, hey, Matt, I can't do beans initially. Okay, I understand. Those are harder to break down than something like potatoes or broccoli or vegetables, whatever. Whatever foods you can't do, start with the other foods. I have a list on my website, endsickness.org. It's called the hypoallergenic food list. I break them down into green, yellow, orange, and red categories. You start with the green ones. You gradually work your way up to the yellow, the orange, the red. You can look at my website, endsickness.org, for more information on that. But the idea is you start with the plants that work with you, and then you gradually expand on other ones that used to work with you or the ones you feel safest with. Before you know it, within a matter of a month or two, you're up at 15, 20 different plants you're consuming. You're eating your rice, your potatoes, your vegetables, your fruits. You're starting to tolerate beans. And then guess what? Next thing you know, your symptoms of mast cell activation are much less severe. You're not having as much of the chemical sensitivity. You're not having as significant of a reaction to foods. Now your aches are better. Now you're sleeping better. Now your bowel movements are better. All these things have been improvements I've seen in clients. You don't want to buy into this, meat-heavy, animal product-heavy diet. Almost everyone that calls me is in that situation where they're consuming way too many of these trigger foods. Your meat, dairy, eggs, nuts, seeds, gluten, all those things. They're wondering why. They're saying, man, I got to eat this low histamine diet. I'm eating a lot of meat, but I'm eating all low histamine foods, and I'm still having problems. Well, guess what? It's the meat. If you're eating all low histamine foods, but you're eating eggs, guess what? It's the eggs, right? It's never the fruits, vegetables, rice, beans, potatoes. It's never them that are causing the mast cell activation. Those foods are just easier to break down. They're not going to be your problem. And this is what I've seen with hundreds of clients. I saw it with myself. I saw it with my daughter. I've seen it with family members who have struggled with mold illness. The reality is if you have histamine intolerance, you have mast cell activation syndrome, you're more than likely have been exposed to mycotoxins or mold, and your body is in a situation where it's not breaking down your proteins because of it. When the mold exposure becomes significant, your body starts producing less of the pancreatic elastase, other enzymes that are sufficient, that are needed to break down these proteins. And then you end up in a situation where you keep eating the same foods that trigger you, and you wonder, why am I getting worse? Why am I getting worse? I'm still eating the same things. Well, that's the problem. You're still eating the same things that you were eating when you were healthy, and now you're eating them when you're sick. And that's the problem. That's what's aggravating the symptoms, making it worse and worse and worse. So I got plenty more information on my page, endsickness.org. Go there, take a look. I got hundreds of articles, hundreds of videos. I went through this myself, healed myself, my daughter, worked with many clients. So thanks for watching, everybody. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I got my contact information on my website, endsickness.org, or join my page on YouTube. Thanks for watching, everybody. Take care.